If there was anyone that embodied the term Renaissance man to its fullest extent, it was Leonardo da Vinci. A well-rounded polymath who indulged in the hard sciences of engineering, anatomy, architecture, mathematics, and geology, to name a few, also became one of the most famous painters of all time, all while being almost entirely self-educated, pushed forward by sheer curiosity and admiration of the mathematical and aesthetic world he lived in, yet forced to almost constantly be on the move due to political turmoil of late 1400s Italy. This is the story of Leonardo da Vinci, and this is Learn Something New. Leonardo da Vinci was born in 1452 in Anciano, Tuscany, a city that now sits in modern-day Italy. He was the only child to his parents, of which his father was an attorney and his mother was a peasant, though they were never married. It's believed da Vinci lived with his mother for the first few years of his life, and she quickly married another man, starting a new family with him. So, at age 5, Leonardo went to live at his father's estate, staying with that side of the family for the rest of his youth, being largely raised by both his father and his uncle, who instilled in da Vinci an appreciation for nature. When it came to schooling, the man who would become known as one of the smartest of his era had a remarkably unremarkable education, learning the basics of reading, writing, and math, but that's it. He did start messing around with artistry early on, however, and his father was quick to notice, sending him sometime around 14 or 15 years old to become an apprentice to a local sculptor and painter, Andrea del Verrocchio of Florence. The next decade of his life was dedicated to refining his painting and sculpting techniques, learning the ins and outs of the arts. According to texts written in 1550, da Vinci proved to be so incredibly talented that after helping his teacher on a painting called The Baptism of Christ in 1475, del Verrocchio was so humbled by his student's ability that he never touched a paintbrush again. This claim was unsubstantiated and is widely believed to be hyperbole, but it shows how well respected da Vinci's skills were even so close to the time in which he lived. At age 30, he was commissioned for the first time to create a piece that would sit on the altar of a chapel, but he would never finish it. In 1482, the ruler of Florentine commissioned him to create a silver lyre to bring it to a man in Milan as a peace gesture. This man was Ludovico Sforza, and as da Vinci brought him the lyre, he left a letter of his talents, hardly mentioning his artistic abilities, but rather talking himself up as a military engineer. Da Vinci began sketching machines of war, like war chariots with blades mounted to the sides, as well as an armored tank and even an enormous crossbow. Sforza was impressed with his skills and agreed to bring him into his employ. He moved to Milan to work for the powerful family as an engineer, painter, architect, sculptor, and designer of court festivals. It wasn't long before they asked da Vinci to create a 16-foot tall statue made of bronze to honor the founder of the family's dynasty. And he would spend the next 12 years intermittently working on the statue until 1493, when he had finished its clay model. As war broke out with the French, however, bronze became in short supply, so it was never really finished, and the clay model was destroyed after the ruling Sforza Duke fell from power in 1499. After finishing the clay statue, da Vinci began working on one of his most well-known paintings. In 1495, he was asked to create the painting known today as The Last Supper for the dining hall of the monastery of Santa Maria delle Grazie, depicting Jesus and the disciples during their Passover dinner before he was crucified. Da Vinci was far from being just an artist during this time, however. As early as the 1480s, he was looking into anatomy, dissecting human and animal bodies to learn more about them. He made drawings of what he found, including drawing an unborn fetus, a heart, and muscular structures in some of the first of their kind in human record. Some of these findings culminated in his sketch called The Vitruvian Man in 1490. It was also around this time that it's believed that da Vinci began writing in his now famous notebooks, where he noted everything from painting to architecture to mechanics and human anatomy. These have some of the most profound insights into Leonardo's ideations, culminating into sketches of things like a 60'5" mechanical bat, a self-propelled car, a helicopter called the aerial screw, and even a parachute design that I spoke of in the very first video I ever made for this channel. However, when the French invaded Milan in 1499, the Sforza family da Vinci worked for largely fled, leaving him to try and escape persecution as well. It's believed he first fled to Venice, then to Florence, where he painted the most famous piece of art in the world, the Mona Lisa. It was painted sometime between 1503 and 1506, and despite its notoriety, the identity of its subject, and presumably its namesake, remains lost to history. 7 years after he initially left the city, Da Vinci returned to a calmer Milan, though now he had a group of students who admired his work and wished to learn from him, following him. Once he made it back, however, he did little painting, looking more into his scientific studies during this time, especially since now, since he was more famous, he was allowed more freedom in his exploratory dissections, even being invited to do them in hospitals and colleges. But as Milan fell into political strife once again, Da Vinci left, moving to Rome in 1513 and continuing his scientific research. There, he studied botany, geometry, and geology, even managing to come up with a rudimentary idea of how fossils showed that the Earth might be far older than was thought at the time. Eventually, in 1516, Leonardo da Vinci attended a meeting between King Francis I of France and Pope Leo X in Bologna. It was here that the King of France offered to make Da Vinci a close employee to the king, granting him the title, the premier painter and engineer and architect to the king. This offer was too good to refuse. It meant that Da Vinci could live at the Château de Clos near the king's summer palace in Amboise, France, never needing to worry about funding his work or his lifestyle ever again. Yet, he wouldn't be able to enjoy this life for long. Leonardo da Vinci passed away on May 2nd, 1519 at the age of 67, believed to have had a stroke. In his book written in 1550, artist Giorgio Vasari wrote that the King of France, whom had become close friends with the Renaissance man, held his head in his arms as he died. Though once again, this may be hyperbole. What is known is that the king was hit hard by Da Vinci's death. 20 years later, reportedly saying about him, "There had never been another man born in the world who knew as much as Leonardo." His body was laid to rest in the palace church of St. Florentin, though after it was destroyed in the French Revolution, it became impossible to identify his exact gravesite. Leonardo da Vinci has had lasting fame for a reason. He seemed driven by a never-ending three-pronged quest to understand the complexity behind the beauty of our environment, to capture it, and to exhibit mastery over it. His attitude toward his studies led him to come to conclusions that were, at times, centuries beyond contemporary understanding, even by many who were experts in their diverse fields. To end with, quote, "The noblest pleasure is the joy of understanding." Thanks for watching. This has been Learn Something New. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel so that you can be notified when new videos drop. If you want to further support us, consider checking out our Patreon, linked below in the description. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.